Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name is John, and I am an alcoholic. And I am sober today by the grace of God and by the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm happy to be here. Now, any of you who just have been drug in here by somebody else, because this is a grief workshop, you can now leave and go on out to the pool. We only want people to stay who want to be here. The reason that is so is that recovery from significant emotional loss is achieved by a series of small and correct choices made by the griever and no one else. And I want to start out by telling you why I went through this little routine here to close this meeting. We live in a society of people that have educated us with total and complete misinformation about how to deal with significant emotional loss. Everything you have been taught in this society is inaccurate or incorrect or is obsolete. It will not work for recovery from significant emotional loss. Now, let me add to that. I always hate to do this, but I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. Don't anybody throw anything, okay? The 12 steps will not work on grief. How many of you have already found that out yourself? Thank you. God, I knew I wasn't crazy, you know. You have to understand that the 12 steps are a disease-based recovery model. Okay? How many of you are clear as a bell that alcoholism and drug addiction and so on and so forth are diseases? You all okay with that? Great. Therefore, the solution to a disease must be a disease-based recovery program. Is this too loud? Okay, because it's loud where I'm standing. Grief, however, is not a disease. Grief is normal. Do you follow what I'm saying here? So to take a set of steps or tools that are designed to work on a disease and try to make them work on something that is not a disease is counterproductive and will create nothing more than a bunch of frustration. And it'll also begin to cause you to question whether or not the 12 steps work. See, and I'm standing here telling you 17 years later that the goddamn 12 steps worked really well on a disease that I have. You know, I am indeed powerless over alcohol. I have a physical illness. I have an allergy. There is no question about it. You see what I'm saying? Now, grief is not one of those things. One of the big problems where grief is concerned in 12-step programs is that we have, many of us, been led to believe erroneous stuff when we first got sober. Now, when I first got clean and sober, they told me that the 12 steps will work on everything. And that is not true. Okay? And if you read the big book very carefully, it'll tell you that, just as clear as a bell. Okay? The other things that are contrary between the 12-step programs and grief are things like intervention. Now, when I first got sober, there were no recovery hospitals. There was not a little recovery hospital on every corner. The word intervention just had never even come up, and so forth. But as we have progressed and learned more about these addictive disorders that we all have, we've discovered that it is indeed possible to intervene, and they have a whole, it's almost like a science now of intervention, and they go out there and they intervene, and they jump all over somebody's case and drag their ass off to a hospital, and lo and behold, some of them actually get clean and sober and stick around here for years and years and years. The problem is that you cannot intervene with grief, because grief is a unique and individual experience. It is experienced at 100% by everyone, and everyone is different. You see? The other things that separate and again, I'm really not particularly interested in grief, which may sound a little strange, but what I am interested in is grief recovery. I have watched people in 12-step programs do page after page of fearless and searching moral inventories, and it does no good in terms of their relationship with grandmother who died, because grief is not a moral issue. See? It does not make any difference how many character defects you identify, because grief is not a character defect. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, you can spend the rest of your life humbly asking God to remove your grief, and it ain't going to happen, because grief is not a shortcoming. In fact, most of the time what people try to do is to have God remove their feelings. And I can guarantee you there's one thing the big shooter ain't going to do, you know. I mean, the objective of all this is to somehow, some way try to return to being human. See? And so what happens is that we get raised in a society that teaches us all this garbage. And then somewhere in this room, what happens is that most people begin at some level to treat their unresolved grief chemically. Now, isn't that interesting? And look at all these heads going up and down. Isn't that amazing? See, I almost am willing to believe, and I always hesitate to say this because I don't want anybody running out saying John finds grievers under every bed, because that's just not what I'm really trying to say. But I'm somewhere convinced that every person who gets involved in a compulsive obsessive disorder of some kind is doing so in an attempt to deal with stored up feelings that if they just knew a more appropriate way to deal with the feelings, they would. So it's like... it's kind of like, let's say, just for the hell of it here, we have 100 people who experience a significant emotional loss. Okay? Now, let's say that this creates a churning group of feelings, a lot of conflict. Okay? In our society, what do you think is the most often used tool that we use to try to deal with our feelings in an inappropriate way? Alcohol, no. Drugs, no. Boom. Food. By far and away, the most significant compulsive obsessive disorder that we have in our society. I mean, if you take the number of alcoholics and cocaine addicts and drug addicts and this, that, and the other thing, you add them all together, multiply times 33, you still have not even begun to approach the number of people who try to deal with painful human emotion by eating. And so you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, I'm a reasonably intelligent human being. Where on earth did I ever get the insane idea that food was somehow going to help me grieve? See? Now, in the last 5 years or so, it has become, well, actually 8 years or so, it has become kind of chic to blame a lot of stuff on mom and dad. And in this case, I want to lay it off on grandma. And in response to that, I will be starting a 12-step program very soon called Adult Children of Grandmothers Anonymous. We now have 208 12-step programs. Did I tell you guys about this bumper sticker I saw in Orange County here not long ago? And is there anybody here not from Southern California? Okay, Southern California, just hang out here for a long time. You will discover we have bumper stickers espousing every position on Earth. We have Save the Whales if you like whales. We have Nuke the Whales if you don't, right? I'm driving down to Orange County here a couple months ago to speak at a meeting, and I pull up behind this truck, and he's got a bumper sticker on the back, and it says, "Tanned, rested, ready. Nixon, 92. So, anyway, let's get back to grandmothers. How many of you remember coming home from school or coming home from playing with your little pals and something had gone wrong and they'd hurt your feelings or whatever, or you believed that they'd hurt your feelings, and you came walking into the house or something and you had some alligator tears running down your face? Remember that? And you were met right there at the screen door or something by Grandma who said, "Don't feel bad, comma. Here, have some cookies and milk, comma. You'll feel better." Isn't that amazing? Did you all know that this little computer you got up here on your head never forgets anything? Never. And it remembers best the things it heard from people who exercise significant influence over your life, kind of like Grandma. And the other thing, I don't know if you know this or not, but that whatever it is you practice is what you get really good at. And now, go back. I'm serious now. Go back to when you were 5 and Grandma's right there dabbing the little tears on your face, and she's saying, "Don't feel bad, comma. Have some milk and cookies." I can see some of you are actually going back there in your mind, and you said milk was cold. Remember that? And after about, maybe 2 to 3 minutes after you had that first cookie, how many of you remember actually feeling better? Absolutely. What we practice we get good at, and what we practice is what we think is working. See, now, I want you to just flash cut ahead 15 years or so and ask yourself why it is in a society that spends billions of dollars on just say no and all this other crap, ask yourself why it is that the local pusher has such an easy sale down at the junior high school lot. Because he's just like Grandma. He's just exactly like Grandma, saying the same damn thing. See? Now, why is it such an easy sell down at the junior high school lot? Because most of them are going through all kinds of turmoil, normal and natural grief, over the change in familiar patterns of behavior. You know? I mean, it's like, I got a son, he's 10 years old, and it's just kind of starting to happen a little bit. He's kind of noticing the chicks. And I figure another year or two, what used to be familiar is no longer going to be familiar. Whereas before, he never was afraid to walk up to anyone, and he never recognized any difference in sexes. He just walked up and said hello. All of a sudden, he's going to kind of be hesitant to walk up and say hi to the girls because he's going to be ashamed of blushing because we have taught him to be ashamed in this society. Does that kind of self-awareness create conflicting feelings caused by a change in your own perception of who you are? How many of you remember the first girlfriend or boyfriend? Are we talking love here? You remember that? Remember how stupid those parents were, referring to your great love affair as having something to do with a zoo? Puppy something or other. Remember that? It was about 14, wasn't it? 15, somewhere in there. And wasn't it grand? I mean, wasn't it lovely? I mean, I was so in love with... What's her name that... I mean, it was grim, Now, how many of you remember when it ended? Oh, several of you. Okay, now... I don't know how they dealt with that in your family, but in my family they dealt with that by the same way they've been dealing with everything. They kept saying, don't feel bad. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Huh? How many of you heard that one? How many of you were just like me and you were stunned to discover you'd been dating a fish? Right? Huh? I was amazed. I was really startled. Anyway, very interesting thing happened is that every time I experienced one of these little losses and every time they gave me misinformation to try to deal with the loss, guess whose life started getting smaller and smaller and smaller? Man, mine was. Remember, it's like the first girlfriend, I showed up. Now, there's a concept that it's almost miraculous in this room. I actually showed up once in my life. I held back nothing. But, God, when that relationship ended, it hurt. And nobody showed up and said, gee, it's really normal. Nothing wrong with you, son. They just what they tried to do was they tried to fix my brain. They kept giving me logical stuff. You'll meet someone else. Well, I knew that. I was going to high school every day and I was surrounded by all kinds of people. Now, I knew I would meet someone else, but I wasn't interested. You see? And so what happened was that when I finally managed to suppress the pain, and I want you to hear what I said. I didn't say completed the pain. I didn't say resolved the loss. I didn't say recovered from grief. I didn't say any of that stuff. What I said was when I was finally able to... How many experts do we have here in packaging? It's a great word. I love that word. It's like you package that pain and you find a little place either in your head or in your tummy or somewhere and you just kind of park that over there. And it's always got a ribbon around it. And on the ribbon it says, I'll never let that shit happen to me again. Oh, now there's a design for a successful relationship. One or both parties going into it with a ribbon saying, I'm only going to play just a little tiny bit. Now, what happened for me is, how many of you are familiar with the game of poker? You know how you ante? You put the little starting amount in the pot, and then theoretically the game develops around certain rules and so forth. Well, that became how I did relationships. I would put in my ante. I'd say, here I am. I'm here. And my ante was about 5%. And then I would kind of sit there objectively and say to this girl, I'd say, well, now, just as soon as you put your 100 in, trust me, I'll go ahead and put in my 95 and we'll ride off into the sunset on the back of a white horse or whatever bullshit they taught her when she was a kid, right? Yeah. And you ever notice how that just kind of doomed those relationships to fail? And even though you were only participating a little bit, they still hurt, didn't they? And so now we got one more roller coaster ride and we got one more little package and we got one more little ribbon and now it says be more careful. See, in all my life, I was taught to hide the feelings and get a new one. Hide the feelings, get a new one. Hide the feelings, get a new one. That'll solve the goddamn problem. Now, bottom line, what you practice is what you get good at. I got so good at this shit that I could get the new one before I didn't feel bad. And all this nodding and smiling and applauding is because you all identify. You know, isn't that amazing? Now, we're all older and we're smarter and we got, we're heavy into spiritual recovery. So, of course, we don't do this shit anymore. And if you're still doing that shit, you might ask yourself, is this a 12-step issue or is this a grief issue? See, there's no room for the new until you erase the old. You hear that? Otherwise, what happens is, and some of you already know this. I was having a conversation with somebody that I care about a great deal just the other day. And the conversation came up about her and her boyfriend and the ex-girlfriend. And she kept saying, it's just the thing that I have the hardest part struggling against is when we're in bed with the other girlfriend. And I just waited. And she said, and she's not even there. Interesting, huh? Well, it finally got to the point where I just kept stacking all these losses up, just like the other kids do in junior high school and that kind of stuff. And when I was like about 15 years old, man, the local drug dealer, although we didn't have drugs back then, the local drug dealer showed up with a bunch of whiskey. You see? We had a lot of problems years ago. We didn't have small packages. It was like big packages. This is a pain in the ass. Kegs and 6-packs and shit. I was just telling my daughter. I got a daughter, by the way, who's 16 years old. She's got 4.5 months sober, right? And which boggles my brain. Hell, I never even knew she drank. Okay, so private detecting is probably not a career move for me. But anyway, her and her little pals are down here with me at the convention, and we were talking the other day. Well, I don't remember if she was in that conversation or not, but we were talking the other day about how easy it is to move cocaine around because it's small. It's like you can get jillions of dollars in just a little suitcase, I've been thinking about coming out of retirement, but that's a whole other story. When I was about 15, it's like this pressure cooker, this emotional storage unit, which happens, like right behind your belt buckle, This unit was like full of conflict. And I'm only talking to you about a couple little things here. I'm only talking to you about, the grandma deal, don't feel bad. And I'm talking to you about the girlfriends that didn't work out and that kind of stuff. I'm not telling you about the alcoholic childhood. How many of you came from some kind of dysfunctional background? Hey. I love it. I never knew what it was until just a few years ago, and they gave it a label. I thought, shit, there you go. I had a drunk dad, and I have a mother. I still have my mother. She's 82, and one day soon she will die. And when she does, who's the current pope? Pope Butch, or whatever his name is. Pope Butch is going to fly over here, and he's going to canonize my mother, because she is definitely a saint, okay? Now, growing up in that environment, okay, created some more conflict. Okay? And the next, how many of you came from those relationships where there was a divorce in your childhood? See, and incidentally, those of you, look around again. Put your hands back up, everybody look around. The divorce rate in our country for marriages that have lasted 10 years, that is, marriages beyond 10 years, the divorce rate in that group is 47%. The first year divorce rate last year in the United States was 54.8%. You understand what I'm saying when I say that? I mean, the people who walked down the aisle hand in hand in wedded bliss, who did not make it to their first anniversary, was almost 55%. Now, do you think we might have a kind of an unresolved grief issue going on with some past? You see, you can't replace relationships. You have to complete one and start one. That's what you got to do. And in this society, they're not going to tell you how to do that. But anyway, back to the story here. The story is that my parents used to argue always late at night. So my sleep pattern got disturbed. Plus, well, no, I won't ask that question. I'll just tell you. The truth of the matter is that there was all kinds of change going on in my household, and I didn't know what it meant. And so I was afraid. And I would have all these conflicting feelings going. And by definition, that's what grief is. Conflicting feelings caused by the same event. Okay? Now, grieving people share a lot of attributes or a lot of character traits, not the least of which is an inability to concentrate. Any of you here that are right now who are grieving a loss of some kind of recent loss and find that you have had incredible difficulty concentrating? I mean, it's like having sober blackouts. You'll all understand that. You know what I mean? Now, here I am. I'm like 12 years old or whatever it is. My parents are arguing and this and that and the other thing. And my sleep patterns are thrown off. I'm grieving because I am afraid. My concentration level changes. And so what starts to happen to the grades? Down the tubes, right? Now, what does the counseling person at the school do? Address the emotional issues? Among other things, you call mom and dad so mom and dad can lie. And then they have big meetings with you in the office where they tell you that you are not working up to your PO. Gotcha, huh? Yes. How many of you did not work up to your PO? See there? God damn. You're failures. There you have it. You just weren't good enough at packaging your feelings and ignoring them. You managed to allow them to affect your life. What failures in this society? Okay? No wonder you had to drink. As a response to your failing. See? So, anyway, bottom line here is that society is geared up to deal with logic. Okay? Society is geared up to deal with intellect. And the bad news is that is true not only outside of 12-step programs, but it is even more particularly true within 12-step programs. There are, in the society that we live in, there are 141 comments that have achieved cliche status in our society in response to significant emotional loss. Okay? Now, you guys have got to be familiar with cliches. I mean, shit, you guys frame them and hang them and... in the world, okay, I haven't said that in 20 years, 25 years. I don't want to really know the real answer, so I'm getting off of this right away. In the world that we live in, okay, there are 141 cliches that people drag out in response to the death of a person. They're like throwaway lines. They're kind of like, have a nice day for death. You know what I mean? Okay? Some of these throwaway lines are things like, the grieving person will say, oh God, I feel terrible. And then the throwaway line will be, don't feel bad. You should feel grateful. You had him for 28 years. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Now, don't get militant here, but is there anybody who can think of a favorite Something they heard following a loss that you just stood there and went, they didn't fucking say that. What?
He's in a better place.
That's a cliche. Now that's, he's in a better place. Have you ever wanted to say, how the fuck do you know, Butch? Who else got a happy one? Go ahead.
I know just how you feel.
Uh-oh. See, she went right straight to the killer right away. I know how you feel. I want to acknowledge you all, and I want to congratulate all of you. I want to thank you on behalf of whatever police department's jurisdiction you were in when you heard that from someone. I can remember, I had a son die in 1977, and God, within 2 days after this child died, I had a person come and get right up in my face. The sincerity just reeked off of them. And they said, John, I really understand how you feel. And the very next thought that crossed my mind was, I think I'll just reach up and rip this fucker's face off. Which was not out of the question as an action on my part in 1977. What are some of the other ones? Who had another one? What? For those of you way in the back, her son was murdered. I'm sorry. Her son was murdered, and someone came up and said, well, at least he didn't commit suicide. That, incidentally, is not one of the 141 cliches. That's just fucking stupid. What else? Give me another one. Oh, you're better off. Fill in the blank. That is, without him, without her, whatever. Yeah.
My favorite one is when you haven't seen it for a long time and you say, you know he loves you. And it's like, well, I can't remember the last time I said it to him, so thank you for sharing.
God, you're so polite. Yeah. Oh, now now that slides us into the next category. How many of you, because of your drinking or using, kind of missed a grieving opportunity in your life? And how many of you have then kind of brought that up in a meeting? All right. That's where you slide into shit like, you have to get off the pity pot. Now, that's not one of the 141 cliches either. That's just so goddamn stupid, I don't believe it. Let go and let God is an inappropriate response to a griever. Who just said that one? Turn it over. Another equally inappropriate response to a person who's just experienced a loss or who has just become aware of a loss that happened a long time ago that they've been hiding most of their life. These are what we call little surprises from the past. They forget to tell you this stuff when you come into 12-step programs. They just say, more will be revealed. You ever notice how they always say that very knowingly? They say, well, more will be revealed. Yes. And then more is revealed. Wow. Yeah, wow. Yeah. And that's followed immediately by, turn it over. Now, please don't anybody misunderstand what I'm saying. There are lots and lots of past experiences in your life that will pop to the top that certainly it is appropriate for you to employ the 12 steps and to change or modify a behavior on your part. Okay? No question about that. Where we are talking about significant emotional loss, however, you better find a new set of tools. Okay? Now, this new set of tools, from my point of view, is, number one, you first have to become aware that a loss occurred. Now, before we go on, I need to kind of lay ground rules out here. We only have 2 hours, okay? So I hope nobody came here with an expectation of somehow getting fixed or some big awareness was going to happen for you. Hope you didn't come here with that, because the nature of what we're talking about here takes days, okay? We do seminars that are 3 days long, and so there's not much that can happen in 2 hours. So I want to talk about one of these things, and then one of the things I also want to do is make sure that I leave a lot of time for questions and answers, because a lot of people have asked me to do that. Okay? Now, the first order of business in recovery from a significant emotional loss may sound a little stupid, because the first thing you have to do is to become aware that a loss happened. Now, you're sitting there thinking, well, Jesus, I certainly must know when a loss happens. No. Because all of our lives in this society, we have been taught to compare and minimize. Okay, now there's some bullshit jargon for you. If you're really into bullshit jargon, write that down. Compare and minimize. Okay? And what I mean by that is simply this. How many of you, let me tell you a story. This is even better. How many of you ever heard while growing up, I cried because I had no shoes until I met the man who had no feet? Now when I say compare and minimize, do you all understand a little bit better? How many of you have said to yourself, well, it could be worse? Well, let's stay right here for a minute. Every loss is experienced at 100%. So how could it possibly be worse? There's no such thing as 150% grief. Now, once you insert the idea of comparison, however, we can now avoid every goddamn loss that happens. Yes, it was really traumatic, but it could have been worse. Now, if you follow that line of thinking out to its logical conclusion, we can only have one griever on the planet. And I don't want to hear the story of that poor son of a bitch. I do not want to hear that story. That would be grim. That would break my heart, you know. Isn't it interesting? We come here and we work really hard trying to become human. And then some asshole like me shows up and says, more work to do, gang. And people sit out there and go, fuck. See, all that stuff has to be identified. That's what I mean when first order business is you have to become aware that a loss happened. In this society, what is a loss that we have as a society universally agreed is a loss? Death. Now, any others? No. None. No others. Society has determined that you can grieve if you experience the death of a blood relative or spouse or child. That's it. Think about it. And society has even determined exactly how long it is appropriate for you to experience this loss. Over here he's saying 3 days, he's getting militant. 3 days must mean that he's working for one of the more enlightened employers in our society. What, 5 days? Oh, we should have an award. We need a thing. Statue. What do you call it? Trophy. We need a trophy. Who do you work for? UCLA. Everybody give them a round of applause. If your mother that you have known and had an intimate relationship with for 58 years fucking dies, UCLA has determined that by God, you can go to the funeral, you can probably show a feeling or two, but not the same one twice. Right? And you should be back on the job 100% productive within 5 days. That's wonderful, isn't it? Which means you got to resign your job now and go to work at UCLA. Now, most places, however, it's 2 days if this is a blood relative and you have to travel. And it ain't funny if it's happened to you. Isn't that amazing? I mean, stop and think about this for a minute. I mean, the example I always use is if you fell down and broke your arm, look how society would treat that. I mean, everybody in our society would be educationally prepared to deliver care to you because you cannot graduate from high school in the state of California unless you take a class in health and safety. So every one of us in this room at some level would know if somebody fell down and broke their arm, we would know to get a couple little splints and tear up a tablecloth and wrap it around here and all this shit. We could walk outside, turn right, go to a phone booth and call 911. As a society, we are geared up for broken arms. We would rush you to the emergency room. We'd slam a little cast on there. They'd shoot you up with drugs. Well, they do that to grievers too. For 6 weeks, you could get off work and get disability pay. People would come by your house and be solicitous and inquire as to your well-being. They would draw little happy face. Are you tired of them happy faces? They would draw those little goddamn happy faces on your cast in multiple colors. Right? And if your mom dies, how many of you ever took a class on people's reaction to loss and what to do about it in high school? You mean they left that out? Isn't that interesting? How many of you ever took a class on people's reaction to loss and what to do about it in college? Amazing. One. Isn't that interesting? Do you realize that we degree and give jobs to school counselors in elementary schools, junior high schools, and high schools in this country who have never had a class on techniques for dealing with grief in a classroom? There's one school district in the entire United States that has trained its counselors for dealing with loss in the classroom. And it is not one of your real cutting-edge school districts, folks. I mean, we're talking Lincoln, Nebraska here. Okay? Isn't that interesting? And so bottom line is that while it is true, society is willing to say, yes, if you experience a death, yes, you can grieve, but by God, you'd better be done soon. Society had the other tip-off that society allows you to grieve a death is that society has created a ritual for it called a funeral. Okay? I don't care what your position is on them, but at least society has done so. Now, is divorce a grieving experience? No. Come on, you guys are pulling my leg here, aren't you? I mean, you don't even get 3 days on that deal, do you? How does compare and minimize start to ring a bell all of a sudden? Do the little cliches start to ring a bell? Well, you're better off without him. Thank God you're rid of the bum. Or whatever, right? Has society created a ritual to help us grieve and complete our relationship with a marriage that didn't work? Nope. Isn't it interesting, though? Society keeps trying to do it. Have you ever noticed in the TV shows and the films and stuff following a divorce, you always find some stupid woman throwing an otherwise valuable ring into a goddamn fountain somewhere? Have you noticed that? I want the concession on fountains. I'm no shit here. We keep trying as a society to create some kind of a cathartic ritual to address that issue, and we don't. But let's talk about some other little things here. In this room, we'll probably get a lot of people who understand what I'm saying anyway. The question is should we, or is it advisable to grieve and complete your relationship with unrealized expectations? How many of you experience every once in a while a sense of real, down to the marrow of your bones, a sense of sadness at how you were raised? See? Now, is it advisable, do you think, for us to acknowledge that loss and to complete it so that it doesn't pop up in our own child rearing with our own families? See? And it's very interesting. This is a kind of this is kind of a little personal sideline here, where I become aware of this incredible deep sense of sadness at how I was raised is always initiated in some process where I'm raising my children. You know, it's like I'll do something, or my daughter will say something, or my son will say something, or we'll be going somewhere, or whatever it is, and all of a sudden I have this incredible sense of just sadness. I've just never come up with a better word to describe it. Just a heartache. Y'all understand? And I won't know what the hell caused it for a while. And then it's like the old little gears get going. And almost always I'll come up with something like, God, I wish I'd have had me for a dad. And that will trigger a group of thoughts about who I really did have for a dad, which will take me to the next little phase of grief recovery, which is acceptance that I do have an incomplete relationship with my father, and that I am by no means powerless over the unfinished condition of that relationship. See, here's where one of those places where we kind of split from 12-step programs. Okay? I have a physical disease. I am powerless over it. I have human emotion. I am most assuredly not powerless over those. But in our society, I was taught my whole life that I was powerless over my feelings. Okay? And so just to get to the second phase of grief recovery, which is acceptance, requires an incredible amount of re-education. Okay? I can think of circumstances and situations where I was 100% the victim, or I was 100% helpless of what was done to me in childhood. Absolutely, no question about that. The last time I checked, however, which was as recently as this morning, I am no longer a child. Damn it. And so, while it is true that I am still at 39, While it is true that I am still no longer, and I am still helpless for what happened to me when I was 12, real truth here, at 47, okay, I am 1% responsible for my reactions to what happened when I was 12. Now, the minute I get to that point of being able to accept that not only am I responsible for my feelings, but that I am also responsible for my recovery, now we have made another one of the small and correct choices that must be made by the griever in order to complete a relationship that has ended. Okay? I know that's really vague, and I'm sorry, but you kind of have to follow that one. A lot of times this is the part where people will say to me, well, 1% responsibility doesn't seem like much. See? And I always say, let me give you an example. Let me show you an analogy of how important 1% is. Everybody take a look at this door over here. See that door? You see how big that is? Now I want you to take a look at the key. And ask yourself if 1% is enough. See, 1% is plenty. The problem is that nobody has ever told us what to do with the 1%. See, nobody has ever said, here's the 1%, now here's what we do with it. Okay? In other words, and I don't want to beat this horse to death here, but I mean, if you take a look at your own car, if you look at the size of your car, the steering wheel cannot possibly represent more than 1% of the size of that car. And we get into the car and we grab the steering wheel and we say, okay, here's our 1% responsibility. And yet one more time in our society we were taught how to drive the goddamn thing. We were taught what to do with the 1%. You see what I'm saying? Come up to the intersection, you turn the right turn signal on, you put your hands at 2 and 10, and you do however you're supposed to do it. And I do this shit, but you see what I'm saying? We were somehow taught what to do. But in this society, what you get are the cliches. And I want you to understand, a few years ago, myself and another guy wrote a book called The Grief Recovery Handbook. And if this may sound like a commercial, and if it does, that's tough. Where you get the information, or the clearest place I know to get the information on how to drive the car, is to get that book. Trust me, I'm not getting rich off of book sales, okay? But you have to understand that until you acquire some knowledge, what you will do is defend what you already believe. I'm going to say that again. Until you get some knowledge, you will defend what you already believe. Okay? Just like that, don't feel bad and go get a new one, you know. And I told you that what I did was I got to the point where I could go get a new one before I ever even felt bad, you know. I mean, it got to the point, you remember the little ante story? You know, it got to the point where I wouldn't ante anything. I'd just tell you I was going to. And then I would stand there and say, now, you go ahead and put your 100% in, you know. And I actually ran across people who would. This was before CODA. I actually found people who would put in 100%, and then do you know what I would do? I would stand there and look at it and say, God, it looks a little light. You know, and I got so good at this stuff that I won every time. God, I won every time. And nobody ever showed up to say to me, what? I win. What? What do you win? See, what I got to win was safety and security from my fear. And if that were life's goal, shit, I would have won. Now, the last time I checked, the goal for me is to align myself with God's will. That's because I'm in this particular room here, okay? And because I'm in this particular room here, I finally have a little clarity on what God's will for me is. See? And I know you all have that same clarity. God's will for me is to be happy, joyous, and free. So somewhere along the line, it's like kind of my responsibility to clean up the wreckage of my past. Would you consider kind of like incomplete and unresolved trash on the side of the road of your life as something that was significant enough to require your attention? See? Now, this is real tough stuff, though. There are people in this room, and I because you've come up to me out in the hallway ahead of time, there are people who've come up and said, I got your book 2 years ago, and I've read some of it. And I say, what? What? Pardon me? I missed. What? They said, well, I got stuck there somewhere, and series of small and correct choices made by the griever. Okay? There's also one of the other things I want to talk about. I want to talk about two things real quick, and then we'll just play questions and answers here. So hopefully maybe some of you can get some awareness about losses and that kind of stuff. One of the things I want to talk about in terms of this grief recovery is it's real scary. I mean, I got to tell you that right out front, because I just don't want anybody walking into that kind of stuff without being forewarned that this is real scary stuff. Because it requires you to confront stuff that you have believed all your life. And it forces you to confront stuff that has worked all of your life. Okay, I mean, I got so good at that don't feel bad shit. Remember, you get good at what you practice? I practiced don't feel bad for so long that I was able to expand it from don't feel bad to include also don't feel good. Then I could expand it one more step to don't feel anything. And what I discovered was that was the real tough one, and I couldn't carry that one out all the time, so I actually went out and found help. Huh? You bet your bippy I did. And it worked. So that when I dragged my sorry little ass into recovery 17 years ago, I had not had a feeling on either side of any issue for so long I couldn't tell you what it was. I mean, and I see a lot of people still many years in recovery. I see people walking around this hotel who look like I used to look. I call them brick faces. And they having a good time? Yeah. Did you go to the dance last night? Yeah. Have fun last night? Yeah. And they remind me of my mother. who anybody here from the Midwest? All Stoics are raised in the Midwest. I used to think it was the Orient, but no. The little Oriental people come over here, take lessons in the Midwest, and go back. Okay? I have a mother whose response to every feeling is to immediately scurry to the kitchen and make a ham and cheese sandwich. And her face will never change. Zip. Now, I have long since completed everything I need to complete with her, and I just love her to death today, and she has not changed one little tiny bit. trust me. And I just love her to death. Only now, today, I am confident in my relationship with her so that when I see her occasionally, I will say something to her about what's happening in my life, and it'll be really great. And I'll say to her, well, how do you feel about that, Mom? And she'll say, just great. And I will say, tell your face. And she'll do the appropriate James family stuff, which is she'll kind of look to the left and she'll look down and go, and scurry right to the kitchen, grab 2 pieces of wheat bread and a little ham, some cheese, and start making a sandwich. And I've long since given up. She's 82, okay? And so I'm going to let her kind of rock and roll on until the end, all right? How the hell did I get off on this? Oh, getting into this stuff is going to require you to confront a lot of stuff that you have believed that has worked. See, you got to understand, if all your life you were taught to mask or hide your sad or painful feelings, and you were taught to do that, what you do is rush out and get a new one. And if you have spent 20 years of your life hiding your feelings and rushing out and getting new ones, goddammit, I guarantee you it is going to be difficult for you to confront that. I mean, see, I have this really insane job, which is kind of like I'm the guy who says, hold it, stop, feel all the pain. Isn't it great I'm not running for anything? I don't think I'd get many votes. What I'm saying is stop, stand still. The only way you're ever going to get to human is when you start taking the actions of a human. And see here again, I don't know about anybody other than me, but how I learn to be human is I get the hell out of 12-step programs and I go out and find humans and I look to see how they're doing. And they're incredible. Mostly I look at children because they're just beyond incredible. There is no editing that goes on in their heads. I got this 10-year-old. I'm telling you, he's lived his whole life. He's never seen me drink. He's never spent one day tiptoeing around the house for fear Daddy's going to go off. You know what I'm saying? He really truly believes that his opinion about anything is every bit as valuable as yours or anyone else's. And I guarantee you he does not apologize when he has a feeling response. It happens right now. No editing. And then we complete whatever it is. See? Now, the problem is you got to retrain yourself to think and talk about the only part of you that really makes a significant difference in your life, and that is your feeling part. We're all already intellectualized to death. I mean, I guarantee you, listen, I mean, you've all heard this one before. You cannot think your way into right action, but you can act your way into right thinking. Isn't that amazing? Any of you know where that came from? I mean, Clancy's running around claiming it, but... Any of you ever heard of Eric Hoffer? 1961, a dock worker, for Christ's sake, wrote that sentence. And there is no sentence more accurate. You cannot think your way into right action. You can only act your way into right thinking. Now, the problem is, what if nobody ever taught you what actions to take? Or worse than that, what if all the actions they taught you were inappropriate? Yes, hide your feelings. Don't ever let them know how you feel. See, that's even moved its way into our commercials. Don't let them see you sweat. I mean, and you have to understand, we'll do anything to avoid dealing with this one half of us that is the normal and natural half. All of you have spent some time in this Judaic Christian society that we live in. Every one of you have had some access to spiritual concepts taught to you by people who, well, never mind, that's a whole different thing. How many of you are familiar with the Christian Bible? Do any of you know what the shortest scripture is in the Christian Bible? Jesus wept. Do any of you remember when? When his friend died. That was normal, wasn't it? Normal and natural. What normally happens, though, to us in this society is we have, and not just us in 12-step programs, but we as a society in the kind of the English-speaking world, we have the great addiction. And I always hesitate to bring this up because it might start a 12-step program. And actually, we could just say AA. The great addiction. Anybody know what it is? Approval. How did we ever get addicted to approval? Well, they started teaching us that it was important from the minute we were born, right? And they just kept cramming that one down our throat. And so even though it's normal and natural to experience emotions when you have a loss, if all your life you've been taught that that's not appropriate action and you need and want the approval of others, and you're going to do whatever you've practiced most, which one are you going to do? I see it all the time. I could do it now. I could walk around this room right now in a room full of people who claim access to rigorous honesty, and I could walk right up to them, and their mother just died 6 weeks ago, and I could say, "Hi, how are you?" How many of you have said, oh, maybe once, "I'm fine," when you weren't? I mean, how many of you have a whole series of shit going on? How many of you have a little go-to-work face that you put on? Huh? That's on the 6th day at UCLA. You got to have that one. They issue that one to you as part of your employment contract. Now over here it's your 3rd day, so you got a problem there. Now there's a strike issue. No. Here's a biggie in this room. How many of you have a little face you put on to go to meetings? Because you've already found that you do not get the approval of others if you talk about your feelings caused by loss. Put your hands up. Leave them up. Look around. Isn't this interesting? See? Well, as the last little educational moment here, and then we'll try to do some questions and answers. The last little educational moment here is I need to share with you some stuff that people should have shared with me when I was 3 or 4 or 5. When you experience a loss of any kind, that is, when anything familiar changes, like moving. Any of you move in childhood? Oh, isn't that interesting? Any of you move more than twice before age 15? Isn't that interesting? Now, how many of you have difficulty participating in the process of acquiring friends? Well, look, it's the same fucking hands. Isn't this amazing? I mean, you got to understand. I'm married to this newcomer who's got 11 years now, and she will always be a newcomer. I want to make sure that gets on record. The second date we ever had, I foxed her into coming over to my apartment. Well, I wasn't completely into recovery yet. Or I still thought short-term energy-relieving behaviors would work. Anyway, we walk into this apartment. She goes about 5 steps into this apartment. She does a 360 and turns around, looks me right in the face and says, "Nobody lives here." I thought, this bitch has got to go. I mean, I had nothing hanging on the walls. I had no plants. She said to me, you could probably move in 2 hours, couldn't you? I said, I just did it not long ago. It's 1 hour and 38 minutes. Right? No problems in my life. I mean, hey, I was 6+ years into recovery, man. Hey, that's another thing. Here I am editorializing, sorry. I do want to point out, however, that you can use length of sobriety as an incredible tool to hide behind. Are you getting all these woos, Walt? Okay. Now, I forget what I'm supposed to finish with, but what I want to do in the next half hour or so is answer questions or deal with comments or anything like that. So I only respond, however, to easy questions. So let's be very clear. But way back there in the back, you right there looking around.
My dad died when I was 14, and that's when I started using opiates. I miss my daddy, and I don't know how to fucking talk.
Let me kind of shorten that down a little bit. The kind of question is, my dad died when I was 14. He was an alcoholic. Now I'll editorialize here. Next thing you really need to know is that it is not only not uncommon, but it is almost predictable that when we are incomplete relationship with Dad, and we probably have an incomplete relationship with Grandpa. Now, I spend most of my life helping people complete relationships with people who have died. But in this case, you have a really wonderful opportunity because Grandpa has not died yet. Okay? And I want you very specific. I don't have time to answer your question, what to do, but after this thing is over, I want you to come up here because I want to give you something. Okay? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Hi.
All these different things for so long, and I'm grieving over it.
Let me jump in here and kind of phrase a question out of that. I do know what you're talking about. The question really kind of is it possible to grieve over the changes that have happened in my life in recovery? And the answer is yes. I mean, matter of fact, it's essential. I mean, let's start at the beginning. Let me tell you a story that's just a tiny bit different than you normally hear it. I had a friend that I met when I was 15. Okay? And over a very short period of time, like less than a year, this became my very best friend. When I was with this friend was the only time I ever got to show my feelings. When I was with this friend, it was the safest I ever felt. This was eventually the only friend I had left on earth. Anybody figure out who my friend was? Alcohol. Now, while my friend and I were walking through the hallways of life, we developed a lot of familiar behaviors based on who we thought we were. Now, all of a sudden, it becomes real important to me to get rid of this friend. Well, actually, the truth is my friend stopped working. It was betrayal at depth. Now, there's a whole other story. We could stop right there and run off on that one, but I'll squeeze it down to say simply this. Until you have grieved and completed your relationship with your drug of choice, there's a very high probability you're not yet done with your drug of choice. That's one of the the other thing too that we're kind of entering into here is that much of my self-perception as to who I am and what I do and how I react and so on and so forth was developed during a period of time when I was under the influence of substances that are not designed to make me feel good about myself. So consequently, I made a lot of choices to do things to get approval of people. I made a lot of choices to do things that I really never thought through because thinking was not high on my agenda when I was drinking. It was kind of more like reacting. Well, when I got sober, not only did I have to stop drinking, but I also had to stop seeing myself in the same light, and I had to stop doing the same things, and I had to find new things to do, and that included every area of my life. It included friends, it included career, it included, you follow what I'm saying? And every one of those I had a relationship with. Now notice I have never said good relationship, just a relationship. You understand? Anything that has happened over a period of time that has emotional intensity attached is a relationship. Okay? Now, I'm just trying to think of another example that I could use to make the point. One of the phone calls that we always get, people, we get the phone rings because people have been reading the Grief Recovery Handbook, and there's a sentence in there that we always get the same phone call. It's, "John, I have found a mistake in the book." And I always say, "Oh, where is it?" And I kind of wait because I know they're going to tell me what page and what paragraph and the whole deal. And I'm going to say, "Well, what does it say?" And I wait, and they say, "Well, it says here, additionally, you must complete your relationship with your pain, isolation, and loneliness, period." And I wait, and I wait. And then they say, "You can't develop a relationship with pain, can you?" And I wait. And I wait. And I wait. And they go, "Oh." Click. And so, but on the same can, I don't want any of you to think that this is that the things that we're kind of introducing to you here is a life's project. I don't want you to hear that. What I want you to hear is that grief is normal and natural. You were just taught that it was abnormal and unnatural. Okay? The one thing I can tell you for sure about grieving people is that they do not lack courage. Jesus, they got courage up the kazoo. What they fucking lack. What they lack. See, I know the guys who tape. They will edit this shit. They will make me sound like a preacher. You know what I mean? What they lack is correct information. And see, again, you can only use what you know. And if what you know is, don't feel bad and go get a new one, that is exactly what you will do. If you have no option. You understand what I'm saying? I've said it over and over again. Recovery from loss is the result of a series of small and correct choices. But if you only have one set of information, you ain't got no choices. You follow them? Does that make sense? Does everybody follow that? And so what it really comes down to is that here you are, you started out normal and natural. Trust me. Well, hell, I can still prove it. How many of you in recovery have had at least one experience where something happened and you noticed that you were starting to have a feeling? I know it was a shock. Now, how many of you then noticed your throat get tight like that? Remember? Because this is where we choke it off. How many of you actually remember a decision you made to get your tears under control? You fucking lose. You lose. Now, I'll guarantee you that if you got it all under control and then nobody noticed, you won. And I'm just the asshole to stand here and say, what? See? I mean, yeah, right there.
Thank you, John. I come from a society where everything is stuff that.
You bet.
It doesn't, you don't show it. So, as directly out of that, I think do you think?
So the question is directly, do I think that therapy is good?
To bring out some of this stuff and kind of close.
All right. Do I think that therapy is good to help us identify things that are unresolved? My answer categorically is yes, absolutely. Now, once we get into that, however, it opens a whole new can of worms. For those of you who do not know, you must interview therapists. Listen, be really clear about this. You are paying them. You hire them. They work for you. It is not the other way around. Okay? Now, there is a vast difference in the educational experiences that therapists have. You must interview. Now, and then I'm going to say one more thing about the whole therapy thing, and then I'm going to get right off of it. Actually, I may get into it and say two things. The first thing is simply this. You must find a therapist who is willing to self-disclose about themselves. If you find a therapist who is unwilling to self-disclose about their own life and their own experiences and so forth, get the fuck out of there as fast as you can. Okay? Now, more directly to the issue of grief. There are a few universities that introduce therapists to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of dying. There are no universities that even offer a course on techniques for dealing with grief. So I want you to understand going in that you may be going in there and being involved more in a partnership while the two of you work through unresolved loss than anything else. And if you find a therapist who is unwilling to divulge their own losses and to participate with you as an equal, then get the hell out of there and keep looking. Okay? Okay. Right here.
John, thank you, Stephen. Rule was, let us go through naturally.
Question is, gee, what a question. The question is, how do I let my feelings go through naturally? Now, if I had about 6 weeks, we could talk about that. Let me answer by saying it is normal and natural following a death. When the kind of initial numbness wears off, to review the relationship you had with the person who lived in your mind. This goes on. And it's during that review process that we discover the things we wish would have ended different, better, or more in the relationship. We don't want that to be true, but it is. Let me show you how, just let me show you in a nutshell here how incomplete relationships happen. Okay? How many of you are willing to acknowledge that you might be a little better at communicating your feelings if you just knew how? How many would you be willing to do that? Okay, now, how many procrastinators do we have here in the room? Let me do, in a nutshell, just let me give you one real fast flash look at what an unfinished relationship looks like. Most of my life, I wanted my father to be proud of me. So I did stuff to get him to be proud of me. Okay? And I he finally was. Now, it's a quiz. It's time for a quiz. Guess what day I found out how proud of me he was? The day after he died. I'm standing in one of those reception lines at a funeral. And the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, the Chevrolet dealer, the goddamn dry cleaner, and everybody on the planet is walking by me saying, "Man, your dad was so proud of you." Now, hold on to your hats here for a minute. You'd think that I would have learned from that experience, wouldn't you? I mean, I'm an intelligent kind of guy. Flash cut. 3 years later, my dad died in 1966. My brother died in 1969. My 20-year-old brother, the only friend I had on earth, the only person I ever talked to about anything important, the only person I ever unloaded to about what my experiences were like in Southeast Asia, the only person who I supported through college, the only person on earth that I was emotionally connected to was my brother. And I was so goddamn proud of him, I cannot tell you. He was like 6'2". He weighed 190 pounds. He was a scholarship pole vaulter. He was a 4-point student at Southern Illinois University. He was wonderful. In 1969, he laid down, he took a nap, he died. About 2 days later, I'm standing in a line at a funeral home in my hometown, which is Danville, Illinois. And as all these people are going by me in this stupid reception line, I'm telling every one of them, boy, I was so proud of him. I was so proud of him. And after about the 15th time, it dawned on me, oh, shit. Guess who I had never told? Those kinds of unidentified and undelivered emotional communications are the building blocks of incomplete relationships. Now, in this society, the griever does this fast review. The griever discovers the stuff they wish had ended different, better, or more. And the griever, doing normal and natural, the griever doing really courageous, walks out into a world and starts to tell people how they're feeling. Into a society that has been trained that grief is unnatural and abnormal, and people in our society absolutely believe that if they can stop you from crying, they have helped you. Who truly believe that if they can get you off the emotions and get you back up in your head, they have helped you. And I told you earlier, there are these 141 cliches, okay? 85% of them are clear communications telling you to treat the loss experience as intellectual rather than emotional. So when 85% of what our grieving person hears is an appeal to him by people he wants the approval from, is an appeal from them to get it up in your head, what do you suppose the griever does? Hey, go for it. I mean, if 8 out of 10 people are telling you to treat this experience intellectual, well, wait a minute, let me ask. How many of you like to be approved of? How many of you like to be well thought of? Kind of get along, go along with the crowd, zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. So when 8 out of 10 people are telling you to get off of the goddamn pity pot, that is a fairly direct communication for you to choke those feelings off right there at the throat, dry those little eyes, and respond to the question, how are you, by saying, thank you. Congratulations. Yeah. Okay. He just sent me off to another planet.
And believe believe me, I took direction, and I took 2.5 years to read the loss of my drug of choice.
All right.
But I picked up your book that you...
The question really is, have I come across a loss that does not respond to the model that's in the Grief Recovery Handbook? And the answer is no. And again, and let me be real clear about this. I'm not standing up here saying that we have the end-all answer to significant emotional loss, or that we're the only people who know what's going on, or I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we live in this absolutely ignorant society about grieving, and one of the things that we're trying to do is just light a little match. You know, I mean, I can remember when I started out doing this, you know, it was kind of like, boy, we're going to just educate the world, you know. I mean, this is such a natural. This is so simple. Anybody with a brain is going to figure this out, and, oh, it's going to be so easy. And so far, I want to report absolute, total, and complete failure at this effort to enlighten the world on something that's normal and natural. See, it's just... Grief is to show painful emotion is so difficult for people to do in this society that we are making no headway at all, because we keep raising more people with misinformation than we can get correct information to. And you bring up a perfect example. And here's a guy who was in a inpatient or outpatient or something, alcohol or drug joint or whatever, and he had a counselor who has no knowledge and no skills and no fucking program, because he couldn't tell the truth and say, I don't know the answer to your question. Pisses me off. Woo. Who is mouthing bullshit. And he said, yes, your grief will take 2.5 years. And so here's a guy following directions, man, sitting around with a big cob up his ass saying, well, I guess I better leave this there for 2.5 years. See, this is my real problem with 12-step programs. There are not 10 people in the United States going around the country talking about the stuff that we're talking about, and in my humble opinion, they're the only 10 people who know what the fuck they're talking about. And until about 3 years ago, I specifically would not let 12-step members come to my grief recovery seminars. And now, almost as a defensive move, 3 years ago, we started to allow it to happen, because there are so many counselors and therapists and chemical addiction people running around spreading misinformation about grief that it is literally killing people I know in recovery. I mean, I know a guy that I helped bring to this program that had 10 plus years of sobriety, who got a divorce, lost his job, lost his house, lost his money. He's walking around. This is grief. And he takes it to meetings, and he takes it to sponsors, and he takes it places where they say, get off the pity pot, turn it over, let go and let God. I saw him on a Friday night about 2 years ago at the... what's that big social bullshit meeting in Beverly Hills? Rodeo. I saw him at the... they didn't never ask me to speak there anyway. I don't care. I see this guy at the Friday meeting. I walk right up to him. I say, because I've heard he's in trouble. I walk up to him and say, Chuck, how are you? I'm fine. I get up in his face. I say, wait, Chuck, this is John. This is your old buddy John here. Now, I've heard that you're getting a divorce and shit's going bad. No, man, I'm on it. I'm talking about it. I'm handling it. I'm fine. Just don't bug me. The next evening at about 6 o'clock, my telephone rang. And Chuck P., with 10 plus years, ate a shotgun. And I, for one, am sick and tired of this misinformation getting passed around that kills people. I mean, we will do anything to keep from saying grief. Not only in our society, but we will do anything to keep from saying grief even in our recovery programs. Now, let me tell you what the new deal is. You're not grieving, you have post-traumatic stress disorder. You're not grieving, you have multiple personality disorder. You don't need to do any grief work. Here, have some non-habit forming, What's the new current hot buzz bullshit drugs? Prozac. There you have it. Here, have a little Prozac. Fix your life. No problem. Look at this. Way over there.
I'm having a hard time staying in the moment. I prepare for the grief. Another cliche from my parents was, "Oh, you'll miss us when we're gone."
Yes.
And I'm always felt that I can't.
Right.
Without preparing for the grief, and I just.
Yes. And I don't know how to really repeat that other than this fellow over here just said that one of the things he was taught growing up was, give me the sentence, you'll miss us when we're gone. Now, the whole implication there is don't get emotionally hooked in because it's going to hurt later. Now, this is a setup for insanity. You understand what I'm saying? And I don't mean that personally, but we've all heard that kind of stuff. I mean, it's like, remember that stupid squirrel in Aesop's fables that was storing up the nuts for the winter? Anybody remember that? I knew that goddamn squirrel was insane when I was 4. Getting ready for something that wasn't here yet. But what happens is that you get that plugged into your head and you start practicing, and whatever you practice you get good at, and so the end result is he's sitting over there saying, I start to get into a relationship, but I won't get in all the way because I know it's going to hurt in the future. Now, watch this. You can work the rest of your life on your belief about, it's going to hurt in the future, and you'll waste your time. What I want you to do is to complete your relationship with Mom and Dad. That's where you got to start. See, that's where you got to start. With your relationship with the people who gave you that misinformation. Okay? All right. Somebody else. Yeah, right there. Yeah, the question is, I'm just kind of rushing here if I can jump on top of your question. My dad died of alcoholism about 4 years ago, and I'm running around really angry that he didn't get sober. Everybody who ever had a loss of trust in God experience, please raise your hands. Now that's the issue you need to work on. Not really Dad's death. You'll get around to that one. Yeah, don't ask why. There's another really great one. Don't ask why. How many of you have been bad boys and girls and have asked why all the fucking time? Yes. Now, and let me stay on this loss of trust in God stuff for a minute. When I was growing up, I had this alcoholic father, and I prayed, and I did all this stuff to God to have him stop the drinking and this and that. And instead of stopping, he drank more, and so on and so forth. And so I spent 17 months in the war. Okay, and anybody else here do the war? The Great War. No, nobody did the Great War. I knew there weren't many of us over there. Bottom line here is that you come away from 17 months in the war, you know there's no God. You know what I mean? And then you show up at a 12-step program and they say, walk right in here and make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of something you don't trust. Well, where do I sign up, man? Shit, I really want this deal. Okay, so I had to start looking at my relationship with God, and I really discovered an interesting thing. Is that I didn't have any trouble with God at all. What I had was a lot of trouble with God's local representatives. And I'm not saying that in any negative way. I want you to hear that I was trying to complete something that was already fine. What I needed to do was to go back and complete my relationships with people. Okay? So that might be one of the places that you start. All right, we got time for one real quick one. In the green, over here. Right there, green. I'm sorry. The question was, although she doesn't know it, if I ever start crying, I will never, ever, ever, ever be able to stop. And they will just come with a net. And they will put me in that place where they put people who have never stopped crying. Okay? Now then, how many of you identify with that sad, woeful story? Now let me just give you a hint there in the green. Are either of those people on either side of you friends of yours? Would you be willing to accept a hug from either one of them right now? Why don't you just, there you go. Sometimes it's real scary to start on this kind of stuff in a therapist's office because you don't trust the goddamn therapist. The next time that sadness comes to the top, Miss Green, find your friend. Now listen carefully. Tears are incredibly overrated as a grief recovery tool. Tears are nothing more than the beginning. So I know people who have practiced and got really great at crying. How many of you know somebody who cries every week? Oh, shit, it's great. See, that's not recovery. That's just a tip-off that there's a need to do some work. Okay? Now, remember that we were talking about choking it off here? The next time it gets right to there, open your mouth and start talking. I'm serious. Open your mouth and start talking. It is impossible to talk and constrict these muscles at the same time. It will help you to start to get the stuff out into the daylight. See, that's a simple little trick is what it really is. Okay? But what happens is that I start to get these emotional responses, and then this goddamn computer clicks in unconsciously, and it starts giving me all that old information. Big boys don't cry. Excuse me. Hold it. Big girls don't cry is actually the title of the song. Us guys have been emotionally available for years. We just been taking a lot of shit because you guys didn't remember the title of that song. What happens is it gets clear up to here, and then all this other stuff starts going. And if you have no other information to deal with, if you got no other choices to make other than your old information, you will go with the old information and you'll just swallow it down and you'll go right back to being whatever they told you to be when you were growing up. You have to be strong for your mother. Or what's that bullshit they told the girls other than something they're not supposed to weep either, and they're furthermore never supposed to climb trees and whatever, all that. But all that old bullshit starts coming up, and the next thing you know, we end up walking around acting like we were taught to act, which would really be great if life was an act. See, but the last time I checked, well, having looked at life from both sides of that coin, from, well, life is an act, or life is something to live to the fullest, I choose this one over here, to live to the fullest. And it's incredible how much joy and how much happiness and how much love and how much honesty and how much connection and how much that kind of stuff that there is if we just get right down to dealing with each other on all levels, which includes our feelings and not just the happy ones. Quite frankly, happy feelings most of the time are very boring. Because I've already heard all that shit from you before. It's the truth that will... Wait a minute, what a concept. The truth will set you free? Somebody make a note of that right away. Okay. If you are not on that mailing list yet, just hang around and keep putting your name on it, or separate the little pad of paper and send around 2 or whatever. That girl I asked to come up here, please don't run off. I want to close by telling you that we're closing right on time, which stuns me. And in addition to that, I want to tell you that I love you. And if you have any difficulty hearing me say that, that is your problem. Work on it. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.